Hello, welcome to part 3 of my Ikoria set review, ranking every card from number 1 to 257. We're going to really power through the rest of the cards. It's a lot of cards, it's about 150 cards left. These are cards that I do not want to first pick. So basically this is where the pick order starts to lose. You can't really trust it 100% at this point because you're not going to be first picking these cards, so there's context. You probably want cards that go well with the cards that you already have. You want cards to fill out your curve. You're either going to need more cheap cards or more expensive cards. You're going to need card draw, removal, fixing. If you draft a bomb or companion, you want to draft cards that go well with that. So from this point on, I'm going to tell you what I think about the cards, but you really should not be first picking these. They are still in a rough order of power level. Number 67, Blossoming Sands. Enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. Tap to add a green or a white. I listed all the green lands prior to the other lands because green is the best color at being 3 or 4 colors. Alright, went a little bit fast there. Next, Jungle Hollow. Enters tapped, gain 1 life. Tap, add black or green. Rugged Highlands. Enters the battlefield tapped, gain 1 life. Add red or green. Thornwood Falls. Enters the battlefield tapped, gain 1 life. Add green or blue. Dismal Backwater. Enters the battlefield tapped, gain 1 life. Add blue or black. Scoured Barrens. Enters the battlefield tapped, gain 1 life. Add white or black. Swiftwater Cliffs. Enters the battlefield tapped, gain 1 life. Add blue or red. Tranquil Cove. Enters the battlefield tapped, add white or blue. Bloodfell Caves. Enters the battlefield tapped, gain 1 life. Add black or red. Windscarred Crag. Enters the battlefield tapped, gain 1 life. Add red or white. Sea Dasher Octopus. 1 blue blue. Mutate 1 and a blue. Creature Octopus 2/2. Flash. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. This is a 3-mana Ophidian, very similar to a card in this set that's a common, but what separates it is that it has Flash and Mutate. So it's a lot easier to make this card connect than a card that does not have Flash. Migration Path. 3 and a green sorcery. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library, cycling 2. This is the perfect card to go with any Ultimatum or Apex Predator. Weaponize the Monsters. Red enchantment. 2 mana, sacrifice a creature, deal 2 damage to any target. This card is incredible. It's kind of similar to Goblin Bombardment, which sack creatures to deal 1. This costs mana, but it deals 2. Important to keep in mind, this can kill creatures, planeswalkers, or the player. The best part about this is it goes to the player. You can use this to finish the game, deal anywhere from 6 to 20 damage. Rumbling Rockslide. 3 and a red sorcery. Deal damage to target creature equal to the number of lands you control. Normally this effect is great when it costs 2 or 3 mana. This is 4 mana sorcery. There's a lot of good removal in the set, so this card is still good, but given the plentiful amount of better removal, I don't try to take this card too early. Polywog Symbiote. 1 and a blue, creature frog, 1/3. Each creature spell you cast costs 1 less to cast if it has Mutate. Whenever you cast a creature spell, if it has Mutate, draw a card and discard a card. The most important thing to remember about this card is that you don't need to mutate to get these benefits. All you have to do is cast a creature spell with Mutate for either its normal converted mana cost or its Mutate cost. Essence Symbiote. 1 and a green, creature beast, 2/2. Whenever a creature you control mutates, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature and you gain 2 life. This is good because you don't have to target exactly the symbiote. You can target a different creature. It's not a human. It's a good target for mutate. And you're not entirely losing out on the card that you mutate onto. You get a little bit of a bonus. Spell Eater Wolverine. 2 and a red, creature Wolverine, 3/2. Spell Eater Wolverine has double strike as long as there are 3 or more instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard. This works really well with cycling, Cathartic Reunion, etc. Porky Parrot. 3 and a red, creature bird beast, 3/4. Mutate 2 and a red. Tap, this creature deals X damage to any target where X is the number of times this creature has mutated. Pingers are good and limited, and they're often vulnerable. This one is nice because it has a big toughness. Try to combine this with creatures with Death Touch or creatures that untap often, which there are many of at common. Lurking Deadeye, 3 and a black, creature human assassin, 4/2 flash. When Lurking Deadeye enters the battlefield, destroy target creature that was dealt damage this turn. Normally cards like this, in the past, Flatham Feet Cutthroat or Vraska's Finisher, do not have flash. The benefit of this card is that you can use it on defense and offense, so really great card. There are also synergies in the set with humans and with flash. Lord Dracus, 1 blue-red, creature lizard beast, 2/3, mutate, hybrid blue-red, hybrid blue-red. Whenever this creature mutates, return an instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. I really overrated this card at first. It really sucks to mutate because you sacrifice a creature you already have in play for a small creature. So a lot of times you're not even upgrading the creature, so it's kind of just a 2-mana regrowth. Channeled Force, 2 blue-red instant. As an additional cost to cast a spell, discard X cards. Deal X damage to up to 1 target creature or planeswalker. Target player draws X cards. This card looked great at first, but if you draw it in the middle of the game, you only have 1 and 2 cards in your hand. It's really bad. I would say this card is at its peak when you have discard and graveyard instant and sorcery synergies. Neutralize, 1 blue-blue, instant, counter target spell, cycling 2 mana. This is one of the best cancels ever printed. A big problem with counter spells is that when you leave them up and your opponent doesn't cast spells, you can't do anything. This is the perfect counter spell because your opponent has no way out. Lava Serpent, 5 and a red, creature elemental serpent, haste, cycling 2, 5/5. This works really well with all the cycling benefits in red. It also works really well with Rooting Moloch and any reanimation spells. Forbidden Friendship, 1 and a red, sorcery. Create a 1/1 red dinosaur with haste and a 1/1 human soldier. This is great because it gives you a non-human creature to mutate onto. It gives you 2 creatures. It works really well with Of One Mind. It works really well with mutate. Works really well with instant and sorcery bonuses. It's really a great card all around in the set. Evolving Wilds, land, tap, sacrifice, search a library for a basic land card, put it into play tapped. This is worse than all the other dual lands in the set, and I would not play it in most 2-color decks. I recommend this if you're splashing. Frostlinks, 2 and a blue, elemental cat, 2/2. When Frostlinks enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls, doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. This is really nice when you're aggressive. There are a lot of blue flyers. There are some blue creatures that draw a card when you deal damage. It's good on the offense and the defense, and it's okay to mutate onto. Yadaro Wandering Monster, 5 red, legendary creature dinosaur turtle, 8/8, trampling haste, cycling 1 and a red. When you cycle it, shuffle it back into your library. If you cycled this card 4 more times, put it onto the battlefield from your graveyard instead. This is a little bit worse than the Lava Serpent that we just went over because it costs more mana, but it's still fine. It's still only 2 mana to cycle, and the 8/8 Trample Haste is a pretty nice body. Alright, went a little bit too fast. Easy Prey, 1 and a black instant. Destroy target creature with converted mana cost 2 or less, cycling 2. Keep in mind, when someone mutates onto a card, the converted mana cost is equal to whichever card is on top. So if your opponent plays one of the 1 or 2 drops that benefits from a mutate, it's often best to just kill it right away on your turn rather than letting them mutate already. And it's a bad removal spell in general, but because it has cycling, I'm always going to play this card. Durable Coil Bug, 1 and a black, creature insect, 2/2. 4 and a black, return Durable Coil Bug from your graveyard to your hand. This is great with self-mill, discard. It's good to mutate onto when it inevitably dies. It's good with sacrifice. One of the better 2-drops in the set. Boot Nipper, 1 and a black, creature beast, 2/1. Enters the battlefield with your choice of a death touch or lifelink counter. This is really built to work with Mutate. It's a fine card. Typhoid Rats, Child of Night have both been fringe playables in the past. Now when you have the option of both, it's definitely a playable card. Mutual Destruction, Black Sorcery. The spell is flash as long as you control a permanent with flash. As an additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice a creature. Destroy target creature. I almost always play this card in my decks, but like I've said, there's a lot of good removal in the set, so you don't want to have too much. This spell is really at its best when you can utilize the flash component of the card. If you're sacrificing a creature in response to your opponent's spells, then you're not really losing card advantage. If you're just sacrificing a creature, that's not really the best benefit for you. It's also good against enchantment-based removal spells in white and blue. Day Squad Marshal, 3 and a white, creature human soldier, 3/3. Enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 human token. This is great we've already seen multiple anthems, we've seen a lot of white cards that benefit you for having a lot of creatures in play. Capture Sphere, 3 and a blue, enchantment aura, flash. Enchant creature. Enters the battlefield, tap enchanted creature. Enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. We've seen this card many times. It's a great card. It stops a lot of tap activate abilities, but it doesn't stop triggered abilities. Definitely a fine card. Sanctuary Lockdown, 2 and a white, enchantment. Humans you control get +1/+1. 2 colorless mana, tap. 2 untapped humans you control, tap target creature and opponent controls. Realize with this card, the tap ability is on the enchantment rather than the creature. So that means that you can use creatures immediately once they come into play. Works extremely well with all the cards that produce multiple humans for one card. Chittering Harvester, 5 and a black, creature nightmare, 4/6, mutate, 4 and a black. Whenever this creature mutates, each opponent sacrifices a creature. This card is really going to oscillate between fine and great. It's bad against people who have tokens, cheap creatures. It's also bad with enchantment removal of your own. But if your opponent is just playing, green-red, this card is going to be incredible. Jubilant Skybonder, 1 hybrid blue-white, creature human wizard, flying, 2/2. Creatures you control with flying have spells your opponents cast that target this creature cost 2 more to cast. If you have any bomb flyers, this card really raises in the pick order. But if you don't have anything, it's pretty mediocre. I like my cheap cards to not be humans so that I can mutate onto them. But there are some human decks, like we just saw with the Anthem, where having a bunch of humans can be good. Glimmer Bell, 1 and a blue, creature, elemental, jellyfish, 1/3. Flying, 1 and blue, untap Glimmer Bell. This is kind of nice. You can use it to attack and block. You can mutate onto it. You can use it with pingers. You can put a lot of auras onto it. Archipelagore, 5 blue, creature Leviathan, 7/7. Mutate, 5 and a blue. Whenever this creature mutates, tap X target creatures where X is the number of times this creature has mutated. Those creatures don't untap during their controller's next untap step. This is a really good finisher in blue to end board stalls, particularly in decks that don't have a lot of removal or ways to get through damage. Alert Heedbonder, 1 green-white hybrid, vigilance, human scout, 2/4. At the beginning of your end step, you gain 1 life for each creature you control with vigilance. There's a vigilance theme in green-white. It's not the best theme to go for, but if you have a lot of the rares, if you have a lot of the uncommon payoffs for vigilance, or if you're just playing against an aggressive deck, this is one of the best defensive creatures in the set. Reconnaissance Mission, 2 blue, enchantment. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card, cycling 2. This has the power level of a rare from previous sets, but this set is so powerful and there's so much good card draw that this card is a lot worse than it may seem at first. But of course it has cycling, so it can never be that bad. Proud Wild Bonder, 2 red-green hybrid, creature human warrior, trample 4/3. Creatures you control with trample you may have this creature assign its combat damage as though it weren't blocked. This works really well if you have other trample synergies. And it's also hybrid mana, so you can play it in almost every deck. Exuberant Wolf Bear, 3 and a green, Wolf Bear, 4/4. Whenever Exuberant Wolf Bear attacks, you may change the base power and toughness of target human you control to Exuberant Wolf Bear's power and toughness until end of turn. This works really well with tokens. It's also just a 4/4/4/4, always going to be a fine card. Trumpeting Gnar, 1 green-blue beast, 3/3. Mutate, 3 green-blue hybrid, 3 green-blue hybrid. Whenever this creature mutates, create a 3/3 green beast creature token. This is a fine card. It's really going to be best as a mutate target rather than to mutate onto other things. Snare Tactician, 2 and a white, human soldier, 2/3. Whenever you cycle a card, tap target creature an opponent controls. This card is good, and it may have been even better in other sets, but in this set there's so many incredible creatures that trigger off of cycling that this is a bit lower in the rankings. Hornbash Mentor, 2 and a green, human warrior, 3/3. Enters the battlefield, put a trample counter on target non-human creature you control. 2 and a green, tap, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control with trample. There's a cycle of these in each color. They're all fine cards, and they all can become really good if you have a lot of synergy, a lot of creatures with the ability related to this card. Humble Naturalist, 1 and a green, human druid, 1/3. Tap, add 1 mana of any color, spend this mana only to cast a creature spell. If you get Umori, the companion, I would be happy to take this card second or third pick. Other than that, I don't like this card because a lot of the best spells that you want to ramp into are non-creature spells. Excavation Mole, 2 and a green, creature mole, 3/3 trample. Enters the battlefield, mill yourself for 3. This can be a downside if you don't have any synergy, but there's a lot of synergy in black, especially green-black, for self-mill. Blitz Leech, 5 and a black, creature leech, flash, 5/2. Enters the battlefield, target creature and opponent controls gets -2/-2 until end of turn. Remove all counters from that creature. This card is cool. It's kind of like a very destitute Shriekmaw. Important to remember the last sentence, remove all counters from that creature. You can get rid of flying, first strike, menace, whatever. And that part is permanent, whereas the -2/-2 is temporary. Whirlwind of Thought, 1 blue, red, white enchantment. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, draw a card. Like I said, in regards to other cards, there's a lot of good card draw in this set. So this is a powerful card, but there's really so much card advantage in the set, and this is 3 colors, so it's tough to make it worth it. Pyroceratops, 3 and a red, creature, elemental, dinosaur, 2/3, trample. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Pyroceratops. Cards like this have been around a lot. You know, it's best in blue-red, can work in white-red, can work in any color combination. Works well with 1 and 2 mana instants. Mystic Subdual, 1 and a blue enchantment or a flash, enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets -2/-0 and loses all abilities. This is a really confusing card regarding mutate, and there's so many abilities in the set. I'm not going to claim that I even understand how this card works. Moving on, Glowstone Recluse, 2 and a green, creature spider, 2/3. Mutate, 3 and a green. Reach, whenever this creature mutates, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. So this is a fine defensive creature, pretty bad. If you're in the mood for auras that pump your creatures, if you're really aggressive, if you're playing against someone who has no removal, if you're playing against someone who has cheap flyers, I could see playing this card. Avian Oddity, 3 and a blue, creature bird, flying, 2/4, cycling, 2 and a blue. When you cycle this, put a flying counter on target creature you control. This is fine, but both both modes are a bit overcosted. Dreamtail Heron, 4 and a blue, creature elemental bird, 3/4, flying. Mutate, 3 and a blue. Whenever this creature mutates, draw a card. This card is good if you have good mutate targets like Farfinder. But if you're just playing it straight up, it's not always going to be worth it. It's just a bit overcosted on both sides. Thieving Otter, 2 and a blue, creature otter, 2/2. When Thieving Otter deals damage to your opponent, draw a card. This card is better when you're on the play versus the draw. You can think about boarding it in or out. It works well with all of the blue effects that give flying or tap or untap, and it is also a good mutate target. Helica Glider, 2 and a white, nightmare squirrel, 2/2. Enters the battlefield with your choice of a flying or first strike counter. Pretty versatile card. When you're aggressive, you choose flying. When you're defensive, you choose first strike. I kind of like the card a little bit. Gust of Wind, 3 and blue, sorcery. The spell costs 2 less to cast if you control a creature with flying. Return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand, draw a card. If you need interaction, this is a fine card. A bit expensive, but fine. If you have all flyers, this card is really powerful, and I like it in a flying deck. Greater Sandworm, 5 green, creature worm, 7/7. Can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, cycling 2. This card works really well with reanimation and with ramp. So I like it in decks with, a lot of green ramp and reanimation, like I said. And it has cycling. So if you've just played a long game and you feel like you need something to go over the top, this might be a good sideboard consideration. And it has cycling, so it doesn't have a lot of the drawbacks that traditional finishers have. Stormwild Caprador, 2 and a white, creature, bird, goat, 1/3, flying. If non-combat damage would be dealt to Stormwild Caprador, prevent that damage. Put a +1/+1 counter on Storm Caprador for each 1 damage prevented this way. So this is pretty bad stats, 1/3 flying for 3, but against a lot of colors, it's basically unkillable against red and green. And you can target with your own spells, so it works well with Divine Arrow, Zenith Flare, etc. Swallow Hole, white, sorcery. Additional cost to cast a spell, tap an untapped creature you control. Exile target tap creature, put a +1/+1 counter on the creature tapped to pay this spell's additional cost. Pretty bad in an aggressive deck, but if you're defensive or in a sideboarded game, you could play this card. Titanoth Rex, 7 green, dinosaur beast, 11/11, trample. Cycling 1 and green. When you cycle it, put a trample counter on target creature you control. This card is bad on its own, but if you have reanimation, if you have trample synergies, if you have an incredible amount of ramp, it can be a good card. Void Beckoner, 6 black, Nightmare Horror, 8/8, Death Touch, cycling 2 and a black. When you cycle Void Beckoner, put a Death Touch counter on target creature you control. Fun fact about this card is that it has alternate art called Godzilla Death Corona, which is going to be available in a limited printing, and they're going to change the name back to this in their second printing because of the current COVID-19 crisis. Sanctuary Smasher, 4 red, creature, rhino beast, 6/4, first strike. Cycling 2 and a red. When you cycle Sanctuary Smasher, put a first strike counter on target creature you control. Mediocre filler. Unpredictable Cyclone, 3 red, enchantment. Cycling 2. If a cycling ability of another non-land card would cause you to draw a card, instead exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a card that shares a card type with a cycled card. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then put the exiled cards that weren't cast this way on the bottom of your library in a random order. Very complicated card. It's okay to just not bother with complicated enchantments like this, but in the perfect deck, you could build a deck where you cycle cards with a low opportunity cost, and maybe you have some ultimatums in your deck that you're going to hit, you can set yourself up for success if maybe the only sorceries in your deck are Memory Leaks and Ultimatums. Call of the Death Dweller, 2 and a black sorcery. Return up to 2 target creature cards with total converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Put a Death Touch counter on either of them and Menace counter on either of them. It's tough to get 2 cards out of this. It works well in Constructed when you can set up your deck, but in Limited you don't want to play a ton of 1 and 2 mana cards, but it's still a fine card. Bastion of Remembrance, 2 and a black enchantment. Enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white token. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. This works on tokens. A lot of cards like this in the past didn't work with tokens. Pretty strong card in a grindy attrition-based matchup. Migratory Greathorn, 3 and a green, creature beast, mutate 2 and a green, 3/4. Whenever this creature mutates, search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped. Fine. I would play this card in a lot of decks. If it seems good, it might be good. Fertile, 2 and a green, 0/0. Enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. 1 and a green, remove a +1/+1 counter. Search your library for a basic land card, put it onto battlefield tapped. This works well with Mutate because the +2/+1 counters stay on the card. And it works well with anything that changes the base power and toughness. And if you ever want to make your opponent shuffle their library, you do have that option. Ferocious Tigerilla, 3 and a red, cat ape, 4/3. Enters the battlefield with your choice of a trample or menace counter. Pretty good. I would say menace is almost always better though. So I would only choose trample if you have trample synergies. Cavern Whisperer, 4 and a black, creature nightmare, 4/4. Mutate 3 and a black. Menace. Whenever this creature mutates, each opponent discards a card. I like this card because it's a menace 4/4, which is a good body, and it makes the opponent discard a card, so it brings you closer to card parity than some of the other mutate cards. Bushmeat Poacher, 3 and a black, human soldier, 2/4. 1, tap, sacrifice another creature, you gain life equal to that creature's toughness, draw a card. This card is really nice. It protects you from removal. It works well with tokens. It works well with dies, triggers. I would play 1 or 2 in most of my decks, and if I'm not playing it, I would look to sideboard it in against. It's going to be obvious when this card is good. Patagia Target, 4 and a white, creature cat, 3/4 flying. Enters the battlefield, target human you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. This is good in aggressive human decks. Garrison Cat, white, creature cat, 1/1. When Garrison Cat dies, create a 1/1 human soldier. These next set of cards are all 1 mana cards that would normally be bad, but the reason that they're good is that they work well with Mutate. You want to have something cheap so that you're not losing out on mana, and when it does die, you get a small bonus back. Mysterious Egg, 1 colorless mana, 0/2 egg. Whenever this creature mutates, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Aegis Turtle, blue, 0/5, creature turtle, vanilla. Almighty Brushwag, green, trample, 1/1. 3 and a green, Almighty Brushwag gets +3/+3 until end of turn. You're going to keep this ability even after you mutate. It's nice to be able to keep pumping. Serrated Scorpion, black, 1/2. When Serrated Scorpion dies, it deals 2 damage to each opponent and you gain 2 life. Blister Spit Gremlin, red, 1/1. 1 and tap, Blister Spit Gremlin deals 1 damage to each opponent. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, untap Blister Spit Gremlin. So it's going to keep all these abilities even after you mutate. I wouldn't love this card, but it works well with the pinger. Ivy Elemental, green and X, 0/0, enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. This is a mediocre card in general, but obviously with the mutate mechanic, that's what it's for. Regal Leosaur, red and a white, dinosaur cat, 2/2. Mutate 1, red-white hybrid, red-white hybrid. Whenever this creature mutates, other creatures you control get +2/+1 until end of turn. I would say this card looks better than it is, but in the perfect deck, it could lead to a good situation. Insatiable Hemophage. 3 and a black, Nightmare, 3/3. Mutate 2 and a black, Death Touch. Whenever this creature mutates, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of times this creature is mutated. Pretty weak effect. You're just draining for 1 and you're sacrificing a creature that you already had in play. And its hard cast is not good either. Will of the All Hunter. 1 and a white. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. If it's blocking, instead put 2 +1/+1 counters on it, cycling 2. It's good when you're blocking. Huntmaster Liger. 3 and a white. Creature cat. 3/4. Mutate 2 and a white. Whenever this creature mutates, other creatures you control get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of times this creature is mutated. Pretty weak. Just count on it to be +1/+1. Mutating and going wide are kind of at odds with each other. Charge of the Forever Beast. 2 and a green sorcery. Additional cost, reveal a creature card from your hand. Charge of the Forever Beast deals damage to a creature planeswalker equal to the revealed card's power. This card is bad because if you draw it in the mid to late game, you might not have a creature in your hand. I would play it if I need removal, or bring it in if the opponent had a planeswalker. Cunning Nightbonder. Blue-black hybrid, blue-black hybrid. Human Rogue 2/2 flash. Spells with flash you cast cost 1 less to cast and can be countered. This card is bad because it's a human. Another thing that's bad is that the premier flash rare from this set costs black, black, blue, and can't even be reduced in cost with this card. Duskfang Mentor. 2 and a black human, 1/3. Enters the battlefield, put a lifelink counter on a non-human. 1 and a black tap, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control with lifelink. Pretty mediocre, but if you need a mana sink, if you have lifelink synergies, it can be good. Fight is 1, white instant, choose one or both. Target human gets +1/+1 indestructible, target non-human gets +1/+1 indestructible until end of turn. This card is powerful and it only costs 1 mana, so I would say you can play this in a lot of decks where you have a mix of humans and non-humans, but this power level of the set is so high that I think other non-creature spells tend to be a bit stronger. Sonorous Howlbounder. 1 black-red hybrid, black-red hybrid. Human warrior, 2/2 menace. Each creature you control with menace can't be blocked except by 3 or more creatures. In the menace aggressive deck, this is a great card. It makes all your creatures basically unblockable, but it is a bad rate. You only get a 2/2 for 3 mana. Wingspan Mentor. 2 and a blue, 1/3 human wizard. Enters the battlefield, put a flying counter on a non-human. 2 and a blue, tap, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control with flying. In a deck with a lot of flyers, this can be a really threatening card. Otherwise, it's not a great effect. Keensight Mentor. 2 and a white, human cleric, 1/4. Enters the battlefield, put a vigilance counter on target non-human. 1 and a white, tap, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control with vigilance. Pretty bad in most white decks because those are all humans, but in the perfect deck with a lot of vigilance, it's a powerful card. Frill Scare Mentor. 2 and a red, human warrior, 3/2. Enters the battlefield, put a menace counter on target non-human. 2 and a red, tap, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control with menace. This one, at least the body is good. It's a 3/2. And like I said, in the black-red menace deck, it can be a good card. Barrier Breach. 2 and a green, instant exile, up to 3 target enchantments, cycling 2. This can be a sideboard card most of the time. The Ozolith. 1 mana, legendary artifact. Whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters, put those counters on the Ozolith. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if the Ozolith has counters on it, you may move all counters from the Ozolith onto target creature. Keep in mind, creatures don't have to die, they only have to leave the battlefield for this to trigger. I haven't actually played with the Ozolith, so maybe I'm underrating it. I could see it being powerful, and it only costs 1 mana. Inditha Crystal. 3 mana artifact, tap for white, black, or green, cycling 2. There's 5 of these. Maybe play them if you have really good 5-drops, companions, ultimatums, but overall they're not very good. Rogrin Crystal. Blue, red, and white crystal. Katria Crystal. Green, blue, and red crystal. Zagoth Crystal. Black, green, and blue crystal. Savai Crystal. Red, white, and black. Honey Mammoth. 4 green, green, elephant, 6/6. Enters the battlefield, you gain 4 life. I've actually been happy with this card, but mostly when I have really good ramp. Mythos of Snapdax. 2 white sorcery. Each player chooses an artifact, creature, enchantment, and planeswalker from among the non-land permanents they control and sacrifice the rest. If black-red was spent to cast a spell, you choose the permanents for each player instead. This card is really, really bad in general, but if you are Mardu, you could play it. Titan's Nest. 1 black, green, blue enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may put the card into your graveyard. Exile a card from your graveyard, add colorless mana. Spend this mana only to cast a colored spell without X in its mana cost. It's just not worth it. Just play something else. Song of Creation. 1 green, blue, red enchantment. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Whenever you cast a spell, draw 2 cards. At the beginning of your end step, discard your hand. It's really likely that you're going to deck yourself with this card or just lose because you discarded your hand. Death's Oasis. White, black, green enchantment. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. Then return a creature card with lesser converted mana cost than the creature that died from your graveyard to your hand. 1. Sacrifice Death's Oasis. You gain life equal to the greatest converted mana cost among creatures you control. This card is actually maybe better than the previous 2 that I just went over, but altogether, you don't necessarily want to be playing enchantments like this in your limited decks in general. Draneth Magistrate. 1 and a white, creature, human, wizard, 1/3. Your opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands. Bad card in general, but if you're playing against a companion, you can board it in. Lead the Stampede. 2 and a green sorcery. Look at the top 5 cards. Reveal any number of creature cards from among them. Put them into your hand. Maybe if you have doesn't work with Amori, but if you were playing like 20 creatures in your deck, you could play this card. Sleeper Dart. 2 mana artifact. Enters the battlefield, draw a card. Tap, sacrifice Sleeper Dart. Target creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. I would only play this card if you had the companion Yorion. Savai Sabertooth. 1 and a white, creature cat, 3/1. Momentum Rumbler. 3 and a red, creature dinosaur, 3/3. When it attacks, if it doesn't have first strike, put a first strike counter on it. When it attacks, if it has first strike, it gains double strike until end of turn. You know, it could be good, but this is a high power level set, so relatively it's weak. Adventurous Impulse. Green sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature or land card from among them. Put it into your hand. This is good at mitigating flood if you play this over a land. It also works well with the instant and sorcery theme in red. Divine Arrow. 1 and a white instant. Deal 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. Cathartic Reunion. 1 and a red. As an additional cost, discard 2 cards, draw 3 cards. It's bad in general, but there's a lot of synergies or reasons that you might want to play this card. Majestic Auricorn. 4 and a white, unicorn, 4/4. Mutate, 3 and a white, vigilance. Whenever this creature mutates, you gain 4 life. Cloud Piercer. 4 and a red, dinosaur, 5/4, mutate, 3 and a red. Reach. Whenever this creature mutates, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. I don't like these past 2 mutate cards because they lead to a lot of card disadvantage. Night Squad Commando. 2 and a black, human soldier, 2/3. Enters the battlefield. If you attack this turn, create a 1/1 white human creature token. It's bad in the average deck, but in black-white humans, it's quite good. Whisper Squad. Black, human soldier, 1/1. 1 and a black, search your library for a card named Whisper Squad, put it onto the battlefield tapped. If you play this card, obviously you need to have 2 or more, and it can be good with the human anthems. Blade Banish. 3 and a white instant, exile target creature with power 4 or greater. Sideboard, mostly. Coordinated Charge. 4 and a white instant, creatures you control get +2/+1 until end of turn, cycling 2. Don't really like this card. Monstrous Step. 4 and a green sorcery. Target creature gets +7/+7 until end of turn. Up to 1 other target creature blocks it this turn if able, cycling 2. This card can be a removal spell or a finisher if you really need that. Wilt. Destroy 1 and a green instant, destroy target artifact or enchantment, cycling 2. This is a nice sideboard card to bring in, and have no risk of dying with this card in your hand in a long game. Ominous Seas, 1 in blue enchantment. Whenever you draw a card, put a foreshadow counter on Ominous Seas. Remove 8 counters, create an 8/8 blue Kraken creature token, cycling 2. In the perfect deck, if you cast this on turn 2, it is going to be pretty good. Give you a 2 mana 8/8 or maybe even 2 8/8s. Escape Protocol, 1 in blue enchantment. Whenever you cycle a card, you may pay 1. When you do, exile target artifact or creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. I don't like this card, but with a lot of synergies, you can make it good. Raking Claws, 1 in a red instant, target creature gains double strike until end of turn, cycling 2. Shredded Sails, 1 in a red instant. Choose 1, destroy target artifact, deal 4 damage to target creature with flying, cycling 2. These past 2 cards, you almost always cycle them, but occasionally you use them and their effects are playable. Hampering Snare, 1 in a blue instant. Creatures your opponents control get -0 until end of turn, cycling 2. Survivor's Bond, 1 in a green, choose 1 or both. Return target human, return target non-human creature from your graveyard to your hand. This card is actually fine, but there is already so much reanimation in green-black that I don't want to play too many. Offspring's Revenge, 2 red, white, black, enchantment. Beginning of combat on your turn, exile target red, white, or black creature from your graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 1/1. It gains haste until your next turn. If you have a lot of enter the battlefield effects, activate abilities, etc., this card can be good. But overall, it is 3 colors, and it only makes 1/1s. Checkpoint Officer, 1 in a white. Human Soldier, 1/2, 1 in a white, tap target creature. There are good removal spells in this set. There are high power and toughness creatures in this set. This is neither. Wingfold Terron, 5 in a blue, creature dinosaur, 3/6. Enters the battlefield with your choice of flying or hexproof. I actually like this as a finisher because it has hexproof if you have nothing else. Vulpikeet, 3 in a white, Foxbird, 2/3. Mutate, 2 in a white, flying. Whenever this creature mutates, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Unlikely Aid, 1 in a black, instant, target creature gets +2/+0 and gains indestructible until end of turn. Really, really bad. Unexpected Fangs, 1 in a black, instant, put a +1/+1 counter and lifelink counter on target creature. Even worse than the last card. Thwart the Enemy, 2 in a green, prevent all damage that would be dealt by creatures your opponents control. This card is actually better than other fogs because your own creatures get to still deal damage. Tentative Connection, 3 in a red. Sorcery, costs 3 less to cast if you control a creature with menace. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature, gains haste until end of turn. It's playable in red-black Sacrifice, but it's not a great card. Plummet, 1 in a green instant, destroy a flyer. Blazing Volley, red, sorcery, deal 1 damage to each creature your opponents control. Phased Dolphin, 2 in a blue, elemental whale, 1/4. When attacks, another target attacking creature can't be blocked this turn. Anticipate, 1 in a blue instant, look at the top 3 cards of your library, 1 into your hand, the rest on the bottom. Perimeter Sergeant, 2 in a white, human, 3/2. Whenever it attacks, other humans you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. The body's really weak, and it doesn't pump the toughness of your other humans. Mosscoat Goriak, 2 in a green, beast, 2/4 vigilance. If you have the vigilance theme, you can play this card. Bristling Boar, 3 in a green, 4/3. Can't be blocked by more than 1 creature. It does work with Mutate, but you're sacrificing a 4-power creature to do so. Main Serval, 1 in a white, creature cat, 1/4 vigilance. Solid Footing, white, enchantment, aura, flash, enchant creature. Enchant creature gets +1/+1. As long as enchanted creature has vigilance, it assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. If your opponent has red removal based maybe or green removal, and this can save a lot of your creatures from a lot of their specific removal, you could board it in. Spontaneous Flight, 2 in a white, target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn, put a flying counter on it. Really bad, but if you need some way to end the game or have reach, you can play it. Spring Draw Trap, 1 mana artifact, flash, 4 and tap, sacrifice, deal 3 damage to any target. bad, but there are some flash synergies in the set. Sudden Spinnerets, green instant. Target creature gets +1/+3 until end of turn. Put a reach counter and untap it. Adaptive Shimmer, 5 mana, colorless, insect, 0/0, flash. Enters the battlefield with 3 +1/+1 counters on it. Corpse Churn, 1 and a black instant. Put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard, then you may return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Strictly worse than Grapple from the Past, which is not even a good card. Dark Bargain, 3 and a black instant. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, 2 into your hand, 1 into the graveyard. Dark Bargain deals 2 damage to you. This is a fine card, but like I've said so many times, there's a lot of card advantage in the set, so I don't like to stoop to these levels. Flycatcher Giraffid, 4 and a green Antelope Lizard, 3/5, enters the battlefield with your choice of Vigilance or Reach. Frenzied Raptor, 2 and a red dinosaur, 4/2. Fully Grown, 2 and a green instant. Target creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. Put a trample counter on it. Gloom Pangolin, 2 and a black Nightmare Pangolin, 1/5. Heightened Reflexes, red. Target creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Put a first strike counter on it. Convolute, 2 and a blue, counter target spell unless its controller pays 4. Maybe against high convert mana cost companion, you could board this in. Crustacean, 3 and a blue, crab, flash, 1/6. Facet Reader, 1 and a blue, human wizard, 1/2. 1 tap, draw a card, then discard a card. You just don't want to play cheap humans, and the body's irrelevant, and it costs mana to loot. Keep Safe, 1 and a blue, counter target spell that targets a permanent you control, draw a card. Light of Hope, white, choose 1, gain 4 life, destroy target enchantment, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. You can board this in. Colossification, 5 green enchantment aura, enchant creature. Enters the battlefield, tap enchanted creature gets +20/+20. Just awful, just setting yourself up to lose. Alright, that's it, and thank you for watching.